So thank you, Peter, for doing this. Today, I just have one question. What is the difference between Kanban and Scrum? And when I should use Kanban and when I should use Scrum? Uh, Talk about different scenarios when they fit well. So tell me about your thoughts around this topic.
Sure. Well, the interesting thing about Kanban versus Scrum is that they are both agile frameworks, which really just means um, that they are set up to deliver solutions with agility. And so, and anymore, people use principles from Kanban and principles from Scrum and kind of intermix them a little bit. And that's only because both of them as frameworks say, we are not prescriptive. This is kind of guardrails, but there are some best practices. Most Scrum teams are using Kanban boards because Kanban boards help us quickly visualize where the work's at. And that saves out, in a lot of meetings and questions about what status is. But Kanban itself, um, it is uh, it is looking at cycle time. So from the moment a work item begins to the moment that a work item is released, and so it's really aligned to like maintenance teams, CI/CD teams, because again you're looking at your cycle time. Um, but there are a lot of principles, and they value most of the same things, right? They value collaboration, and they value learning and incrementally improving over what we've done. And so, uh, Scrum is one of those things where for work that's not necessarily as fully defined up front, Scrum is great for that. And of course, in Scrum, we're using we're using what our capacity is, or our velocity for that increment of time. And our increment of time is our sprint guardrail, I guess, our sprint container. Whereas Kanban, what they're saying is we don't really have that fixed period of time, that sprint. We always pick off the most important thing or the highest priority thing, and and we just work on that. And so we don't kind of containerize ourselves within a sprint. And there's pros and cons. One of the cons that I found is that the sprint acts as a really kind of great guardrail to then look back at that previous period of time and analyze how you did relative to previous sprints, so that you are always improving. It's if we think about like the scientific method, right? We're trying to prove a hypothesis. To do that, and you have a theory, you try to keep as many variables constant as possible. And that's what Scrum helps us do, is keep a lot of those variables constant, and we can analyze how we did sprint over sprint. Um,
So I see, as you said, both are agile methodologies. And at the end of the day, they both talk about or give you a framework to take a big complex task, break it into pieces, and how to execute. That's
yeah,
that's what the both the framework help you uh, execute a complex task. In Scrum, I have a sprint, which is a time box. It can be 2 weeks or 4 weeks. And then supposedly I should not take any new work in the sprint. And in Kanban, it's a little bit free flowing. As the tickets move, you can go and grab most important things, as you said, right?
yeah.
So my one question is, in sprint, in Scrum, what I do is I do a backlog refinement in the middle of the sprint when I'm preparing for the next sprint and figure it out what all should go in the next sprint. So it's a lot of planning goes there, and I know all my priorities and everything. How you do this in Kanban, because it's a continuous flow of work.
Yeah.
So talk about the prioritization in Kanban.
So the prioritization can change on a daily basis. Um, and and so what that does is it actually kind of encourages a little bit more planning and collaboration than you might otherwise have, because you're getting new work in, that's a candidate or it's a top priority, so you have to, as a team, figure out how you're going to decompose it and then implement it. And so, it gets to the point where you do end up spending a lot of time doing planning on it, because that's one of the beauties of Scrum, is that you try to limit change, or to the sprint. And so, when you begin working, we can keep developers' heads down, which is fantastic, because we know that context switching pays a heavy price. And so, one of the things that organizations sometimes fall on is this kind of the sky is always falling mentality, and Scrum kind of helps to encourage getting away from that. So we're intentional about what we're doing, and I found in my career, at least, in times where I've used Scrum versus Kanban, we've had product owners come back and say, "Hey, with Scrum, we're delivering things that we had been promising for years, and we're finally delivering it because I, as a product owner, I'm not always, coming back every day and saying we're pivoting." In Kanban, you are a little bit more subject to whoever's speaking the loudest, which is why I say it's really optimized for maintenance teams as opposed to feature teams.
That's good. I think the difference is very clear that sprint is very much time box, Kanban is free flowing.
Yeah,
Now,
and
my next question is, go ahead, what
I
you
was
were
going to
saying.
say, yeah, and the major gap between the two is for practitioners who don't understand one or the other. There are a lot of people, for example, who don't understand Kanban and say, well, we don't do retrospectives, we don't do planning, we don't have to talk to one another because we're just throwing it over the fence in our, in our columns. That's just a misunderstanding of what Kanban is. When you really start helping people understand what Kanban is and some of the benefits, but also some of the practices, then you start to see that they're a lot more similar than dissimilar.
And I hear most of the time I see people use Kanban for the DevOps, where a lot of DevOps work is happening, and for the regular software development, they prefer Scrum. Is it right to say that for development you use Scrum, and for DevOps maybe you can use Kanban?
Well, I really kind of, it depends on the context. And like I said, the context being that if you are trying to roll out larger features, um, then Scrum might be a great way for you to go. But if you have to, maintenance, for example, it's the highest bug that comes in or the highest tech debt or whatever it is. So you can pivot like that. What that does, though, is that it doesn't keep you focused on delivering larger initiatives. And so that's why I say it's kind of contextual depending on which tool. But generally, if you're a team who is maintenance, is CI/CD, that your system is really healthy and you're able to deploy frequently, Kanban might be the best way to go.